Tragically, on October 4th in Rock Island, Erskine Walker shot Magdalene Comp through the body after she declined his proposals for marriage. Subsequently, Walker took his own life. Miss Comp is currently in critical condition, and Walker had left a note explaining his motives for the unfortunate incident. A heartbreaking incident occurred in Dallas, Texas, as Samuel Cordell, an insurance agent, shot and killed his wife while she was asleep before taking his own life on Friday. The motive behind this tragic event was identified as jealousy. Regrettably, their children are now left without a home. Thomas Carr fell in love with a daughter of his employer, Miss Louisa Fox, and desired to marry her. The young lady being but only 14 years old, the request for her hand was denied by her parents. Thomas at once knew that he wouldn't live without her, and so he procured a razor. He started for the house of Mr. Fox when fate intervened. He met Louisa on the road, accompanied by a younger brother. Carr turned about, and they walked together. During the conversation which ensued, the girl told him that her grandmother, whose house she had just left, had told her that her parents had said that she should never keep his company again. He replied to Miss Fox that he guessed both of them had a short time to live, adding the query, "Louisa, are you prepared?" To which she responded, "I am." Immediately after her reply, he pushed her down and drew out the razor, and proceeded to cut her throat. The girl threw up her hands, which were fearfully gashed in the struggle. It appears that she did not make any outcry or plead for her life, so rapidly was the deed consummated. Subsequent examination showed that the victim's head was nearly severed from her body. The murderer returned to Sewellsville and borrowed a gun. He then proceeded by a roundabout course to a coal bank near Mr. Fox's house, the home of the murdered girl. He stayed there the night, during which he ventured to the front of the house and looked in at the front window, watching the neighbors while they prepared the body of the girl for burial. The next day, he shot himself with the gun, and thinking the wound not fatal, cut his throat with a shoe knife, just after which he was discovered and arrested. He will not recover from his wounds. A love murder with a background of foreign romance excited all London today when Grace Blackaller, a pretty 16-year-old dancing girl, was found on her own doorstep with her throat cut. As she died, she gasped, "A boy did it." Scotland Yard detectives learned she had among her admirers a young man from the East. Detectives immediately began search for an East Indian youth to question him. A young man of respectable connections from Philadelphia committed a deed on the afternoon of Thursday, seldom equaled in atrocity, while excited by jealousy. He decided to make his way to the house of the object of his jealous affections, Mary Davis. He murdered the girl by cutting her throat. The arteries were completely severed, and the miserable girl fell and died at once. The maddened wretch then turned his knife against himself, and in another moment, the murderer was a suicide. Two Mississippi River steamboat hands, named Noe and Cartwright, lately had a quarrel about a young lady at Memphis, whose hand and heart they both wished to obtain. Cartwright thought his chances would be improved by getting rid of his rival, and so he shot Noe through the head, killing him instantly. His joy, however, was short-lived, for on the very day on which the murder was committed, he learned that the young lady in question had dismissed both him and his victim, and bestowed her favors upon a third person. He then surrendered himself to an officer and, with the pistol used in slaying his rival, blew his own brains out. The ball passed through his head and inflicted a slight wound upon the officer who had him in custody. Carmine William Collette has been desperately in love with Miss Wygand, a neighbor's daughter. Last night he called on the young lady only to find a rival in her company. The young woman was in the parlor of her parents' home when Mr. Colette drew a knife, stabbed himself 3 times in the chest, and fell dead.